My name is Karen, and I'm 25 years old. My grandfather, who raised me, passed away 6 months ago. Today is the day when the lawyer will read my grandfather's will. That's why I was visiting my grandfather's house with my sister Susan, who is 4 years older than me and is my only family. Our parents died in an accident 20 years ago, and since then, we were taken care of by our grandparents. After my grandmother passed away a few years ago due to illness, my grandfather's health declined year by year, and he became frequently ill. Because I was worried about him, I lived in an apartment near his house and often went back to check on him. "You're a grown woman. It's not right to keep coming back home," my grandfather would say, though he would always laugh cheerfully nonetheless. Then one day, when I visited as usual, I found my grandfather lying in pain at the entrance. In a panic, I called the ambulance, but my grandfather passed away suddenly. "Hey, what are you daydreaming for? At least prepare some tea." My sister's voice brought me back to reality. "Right, the lawyer will be here soon," I responded and headed to the kitchen. Glancing quickly, I saw my sister lazily stretching out her legs on the mat and yawning. I could still smell my sister's strong perfume even in the kitchen. I thought to myself, making a face. "She's the same as always," I murmured quietly as I placed the kettle on the stove. My sister has always been self-centered. Since she was a teenager, she started dyeing her hair frequently, as if it were natural. She hung out with troublemakers and was always out, demanding money without working, assuming that part-time jobs were unnecessary. Even when she caused trouble and our grandparents had to apologize for her, she remained unfazed. I, being the quiet one, often had to deal with the fallout. She doesn't seem to have changed much even after growing up. She doesn't have a stable job and just drifts around while working part-time. I knew she had been asking our grandfather for money whenever I wasn't around. It's easy to imagine that she would find all this troublesome if it weren't for the inheritance. "Oh, you must be the lawyer. Thank you for coming today," I heard my sister's formal voice as the lawyer arrived. I hurriedly placed tea leaves into the teapot and headed towards the entrance. "Thank you for coming today." I had met the lawyer at the funeral. His eyes were as kind as my grandfather's. A lawyer's badge shone brightly on his chest. After offering incense in front of my grandfather's portrait, he took a sip of the tea I served and then took out my grandfather's will, which was entrusted to him while he was still alive. The will stated that my elder sister Susan would inherit $20 million in cash, and I, the younger daughter, would inherit the house and the land it sits on. Upon hearing this, my sister burst out laughing. $20 million in cash for the elder daughter and only an old house for the younger one? How hilarious. It's just right for someone as plain as you. "It's not just the house. There's also the land," I retorted, to which my sister laughed snidely. "Huh, the value of this land in such a god-forsaken place is hardly surprising. I guess I would have preferred cash." Grandpa must have had a soft spot for me after all. I couldn't deny feeling a bit shocked. I suppose my grandfather wanted me to protect his beloved house and land where he spent his life with my grandmother. Huh, a house and land. That's pretty awesome, isn't it? Brian, my boyfriend, exclaimed in surprise after hearing my story. I shook my head, implying it's not as great as it sounds. "Not really. My sister inherited $20 million in cash." "That's more impressive," I admitted, feeling a sense of emptiness saying it out loud. Even though I was being modest, verbalizing it felt like an acknowledgement. "Wow, beautiful, and has money. Now she's the more's the better victory," Brian said insensitively. I shot Brian a side glance for his insensitive comment. Realizing his misstep, he joked, "Your comfort means more to me than money, Karen." Brian has been my boyfriend since I started working. We met at a social event, and being of the same age, we clicked well. I've introduced him to my grandfather and my sister. While he hasn't proposed yet, I have been considering marriage. Today was our first date in the wild, and I ended up telling Brian about my inheritance. I suppose it was because I thought he would become my husband someday. I had no idea I would come to regret this. A few days later, I was visiting the family home I had inherited from my grandfather. I had intended to clean and sort out my grandfather's belongings. The property was large, but the house was modest. I figured I could manage it on my own and looked around the house, pondering. It's close to my workplace. Maybe I should move here. Living here leisurely with a cat doesn't sound too bad. There would be no rent to pay, and while there might be maintenance costs for deterioration, I have been working hard and saving. Feeling embarrassed at the thought of moving in with Brian someday, I vigorously shook my head. Rolling up my sleeves to begin cleaning, I was interrupted by a phone call. My sister's name appeared on my smartphone screen. Sis, what's up? Hey Karen, having fun all by yourself in that old house? My sister sounded drunk, her words drawn out uniquely, even more so than usual. Since you're drinking, aren't you? It's still afternoon, I pointed out with a sigh. Oh, you're such a Miss Goody Two-Shoes, she exaggeratedly sighed back, confirming my suspicion. I was thinking about moving here eventually, I answered her question, hoping to end the conversation quickly. Really? I'm enjoying a suite in a luxury hotel right now, my sister boasted loudly. Guess who I'm with right now? She teased. I have no idea, I replied. Boring. It's that kind of attitude that'll make Brian dislike you. What? I was taken aback when Brian's voice suddenly took over the line. The sudden intervention threw me off balance, dizzying question marks popping up in my head. But I dismissed my imagination. Surprise, huh? My sister's mean-spirited voice chimed in. Ever since you introduced him to me, I thought Brian was quite a catch. She continued boastfully, describing how she had been attracted to Brian since I introduced him, knew where he worked because of me, and approached him as soon as he left work. She claimed he came along readily when she asked and told her she was hundreds of times more attractive than me. I listened in stunned silence. Karen, I'm really sorry. Brian's voice broke the silence. Tell me it's a mistake. I tried to speak, but he cut in again. As a man, I had to take this opportunity, he explained. What? I do feel bad about it, he added. But come on, it's impossible to resist a beautiful woman who has $20 million, right? Brian's tone drained my emotions away. I felt a cold sensation, like my blood was being drained from me. You know what? I don't need a man like you, I retorted, feeling a surge of anger and hurt. At my words, I could hear my sister laughing uproariously in the background. The voice on the phone changed back to my sister. Well, that's how it is. From now on, let's not consider ourselves sisters, okay? I wouldn't want you turning to me just because you're broke, she coldly declared before ending the call. Overwhelmed by emotions that had lagged behind, all I could do was cry out. 5 years have passed since then. I had a cat in my lap, dozing off in front of my laptop. Today was my day off, but there was still a bit of work left from what I brought home. Oh no, this won't get the work done, I muttered to myself, feeling guilty as I gently moved the cat off my lap. Just as I reached out, my phone started to ring. An unfamiliar number was displayed on my smartphone. Thinking it could be work-related, I answered the call without any suspicion. Hello? Karen, long time no see. The voice instantly froze me. It was unmistakably my sister's distinctive way of speaking. It's you, Karen, isn't it? I can tell just from your initial hello. After all, I'm your big sister, she continued. 5 years had passed, which should make Susan 34 now. A smirk formed at the corner of my mouth at her unchanging way of talking. You're just the same. By the way, I came home and there's a hotel standing. Did you sell the house? She inquired, probing into my affairs. That's none of your business, I replied sharply. Oh, come on, it's quite a grand hotel, huh? You must have made a good chunk of change, huh? She persisted. Getting fed up, I was about to end the call when she started to chatter about her current situation. According to Susan, she had blown through the inheritance in about 2 years and now had a considerable amount of debt. Even Brian, whom she was still hanging around, seemed to be drowning in debt. I was speechless. Honestly, I couldn't care less. Against Susan's yelling, I answered calmly, so lend me some money. I've always wondered why Grandpa distributed his estate that way. But on the day you took Brian from me and cut ties, I understood. I began slowly. 5 years ago, when Brian broke up with me, I was crushed. After crying my heart out, I sat dazed in my room, staring into space. I'm such a fool, I murmured, and large tears began to spill again. My gaze fell on a painting I had made as a child and had gifted to my grandfather. He had framed it and kept it hanging lovingly. Unsteadily rising, I picked up the painting. Grandpa, I whispered. As feelings of nostalgia and loneliness welled up, tears started to come. I felt something drop from the back of the frame. Picking it up, I saw it was a fresh sheet of notepaper addressed to me. I remembered how, when I was little, I used to stick notes on the back of this frame and exchange secret messages with my grandfather. It was like a family journal, really. Knowing that I was to inherit the house, he probably figured I'd find this note. I'm glad I noticed, I said, shuddering at the thought that I might have left it unnoticed. To Karen, the date on the letter was just before my grandfather passed. I knew you'd definitely notice this letter. Right now, you're probably wondering why I distributed my estate in such a manner. Cash to your sister and an old house and land for you. It may seem like I favored Susan, but that's not the case. Despite any claims of favoritism, I wanted to leave most of my estate to you, who cared for me till the end. I finally understood what had been bothering me. No matter what, Grandpa thought more of me, huh? I reflected. I'm sure I was deeply hurt by Susan's words at that time. I continued to read the letter, feeling a kind of jealousy. But Susan would not be satisfied with a regular division. This child, even as her grandfather. I must admit, she's terribly greedy. Exactly, Grandpa. She even took my boyfriend from me. That's what I want to tell him in my heart. That's why I arranged it this way. If at first glance Susan appears to have received the better deal, she won't pay attention to your share. According to Grandfather's letter, the value of this land in our area is continuously increasing due to ongoing urban development. As of the time I'm writing this, it's not worth Susan's $20 million yet, but the value of this land will surely increase in the future. When I finished conveying the content of the letter, Susan clicked her tongue and said, "Hag. I lived in that house for a while, but when my marriage was settled, I decided to sell the house just like Grandfather's letter said. The land value had risen enough anyway. I'm never lending you money." Susan seemed frustrated. But as if she had a good idea, she said, "Right, if you want, I can give Brian back to you. So help your sister. It's a good deal, right?" At that moment, something snapped inside of me. Enough is enough. You've been taken care of by Grandpa, and yet you haven't shown a hint of gratitude. I despise you for that, and you're not my sister anymore. Besides, I'm already married. I don't meet Brian, and I don't even want to see his face. Stay out of my life for good, I said firmly and hung up. I quickly set up call blocking, and my cat on my lap was cowering on the bed. I quickly picked up my cat and said, "I'm sorry." After that, it seems Susan contacted Brian, and they both stormed into our old house. Did they try to return Brian to me? There's a respectable end there now. They must have misunderstood something and were shouting that they were my relatives, even though I just sold the land and had nothing to do with it. It's simple for those two. I sold the land and an end was built. Equals, I must be the owner of the end, I thought. Of course, the staff reported to the police. The two of them were arrested because they had destroyed several items in the end. Furthermore, it was discovered that they had been committing marriage fraud for money in the past. It seems they'll be sent to prison together. I was also questioned by the police, but I was able to prove that I had no involvement quickly as we were estranged and was released. As my husband, who came to pick me up, and I were walking through the station, we heard screaming and turned our gaze. There were Susan and Brian, who looked completely different. Fortunately, they didn't notice us. Both of them had messy hair, worn-out clothes, and looked nothing like the two people I remember. Especially Susan, who never skipped her makeup and fashion, looked even more different. They were probably being moved to a different location. As I watched the two of them, filled with a sense of melancholy, my husband and I locked eyes. I grabbed the hand he extended, and we left the police station. "Are you okay?" My husband, always concerned, looked at me with gentle eyes. "I'm okay. I have you in this little one," I said, touching my fairly noticeable belly, and smiled back. In my belly, a new member of our family is growing. Money is important, but there's something even more valuable. That's what I want to teach our child. With my husband by my side,